choice.
Good to see you, bro. Just a little heads up. My grandma died last night. last night. So I'll admit I'm a little more kind of thrown off than I kind of expected to be, no different than you kind of see it coming, it's coming. Then you're like, why do I feel so off balance about this? Understanding that it's lost and understanding I'm going through my own, kind of race to acceptance with that. But if I seem weird energy today, or if I seem kind of spacey, more than I guess normal, I don't know how spacey I normally am, but that's probably one of my contributing factors. Just letting you know.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, man. It's definitely it's a hard hit to take. I mean, nobody lives forever, but it still sucks when you lose them. So my condolences.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you. All right. I kind of want to just jump back into this again. I think that not only will this kind of be a nice distraction from kind of just that information that, I've been sorting out in the last 12 hours, but also I really, when we got off of the podcast last time that we just did, and we talked about the maybe, and you had a very good observation that you made with the maybe that I think is necessary and good for sharing. I don't know if you want to do it or if you want me to tell it. How would you like to do that?
I think in a nutshell, the maybe is a good analogy, but I think it applies directly to judgment. It doesn't fit so well into all the other categories. I mean, in some, yeah, it'll work to an extent, but I think judgment specifically, the maybe applies across the board. And that's the only spot that it really seems like it fits all the way around unanimously.
Yeah, I agreed with you 100%. I thought about it a lot deeper afterwards, and it still just applied to the judgment. This would be when people say, hey, that's awesome, or good job, or I really that's going to be so good, or you suck, or you're no good, or that's a tragedy. What a sad story. That's the worst. And it's kind of the whole answer for that goes maybe. People are assessing what their opinions are of what something is going to be good or bad, but you never know how that's really going to affect your life. You don't know. So maybe really applied to the judgment part to it. And that got me inspired of thinking more about what is our first rule, and everything is a choice when we get our guys together. And we need that area, that place needs to be a safe place for us to be human. And so the first rule is no blame, no shame, no judgments, and even sometimes no fear, because fear is imaginary, but that's a different conversation altogether. But the first three, no blame, no shame, no judgment, is the first rule. And I want to kind of break into that a little bit. I don't think we really do it justice as far as why is that the first rule. It seems simple, but it really gets into do you have the awareness to catch when those things are happening either to you or when you're doing them to others or yourself? What are your thoughts, Eddie?
I think they're learn burns. You kind of gather that information as you go on. You don't really know them off top. And a lot of it does go based off of feeling and circumstance, because one situation to the next may involve a different adjustment. So I don't know if I would say they're static, but you can kind of utilize them as a baseline to get a feel for it, and then you just make the workaround depending on the scenario, the person, the situation.
Sure. Well, we'll do some scenarios. We'll run through, and it'd be good at some point. We'll just have some people throw in what about this? I think that'd be fun. I like the real life stuff. I think you and I would do well with having somebody go, all right, you two, here's my real issues. Let's see how you guys see this shit. I wouldn't mind that at all. I think it would be wonderful. But I'm going to get into a little bit about all right, let's break it down a little bit. All right. Blame. Is blame good or bad?
I would probably say it leans heavier on the bad side. There's not a whole lot of positive you can take from it. If I had enough time, maybe I might be able to find something you could utilize it to be positive towards. But yeah, all I can see so far is blame, just pointing fingers. You're going to have three pointing back at you. So what's it going to do for you?
It's true. It does lean harder on the negative emotion side, but I did my own thinking about it also because that whole thing, I'm like, it leans more negatively. Can it be positive? So blame is defined as assigning fault or wrong. That's essentially what it is. Like, whose fault is it? Or, I think that you did something wrong. It's your fault. You did it, that kind of thing. So I did a little pros and cons for that. On my pros, if there's assigning fault to something, it is a heavy dose of not only responsibility, but accountability. And also it gives you the opportunity to go like, oh, well, hey, this guy, hey, Rick, you put that thing upside down. This one's wrong. You didn't do a good job with this, but if you turn it upside down, it would be right. So it's your fault the thing's upside down, but now next time, don't put it upside down like that. It'll work better. So by assigning blame that it was me and I'm responsible for what happened, I am accountable for what I did that didn't work, now I have a learning opportunity. So in those substances, like as far as that section goes, is blame always a bad thing? I guess it really does come down to, like we talked about last time, depending on how you decide to take that. Taking accountability for something that somebody blamed you for, if it's something that's not like, you killed that person, you're like, hey, whoa, I'm not going to just take accountability. I didn't do it. But one of those things. But if it's like, hey, this is not where that goes, or who left the milk out? Opportunity to grow there. Cons, negative feelings that you have, the guilt, feeling at fault, feeling criticized or being criticized, condemnation, or just a heavy defensiveness that comes from somebody blaming it's all you're the one who did it, you're the one who's wrong or bad or whatever it would be. It's your fault this all happened. And usually it can be used as a weapon, is probably most commonly why we see it used that way, where someone would as a weapon go, yeah, well, it's Eddie's fault I don't have that thing that I wanted, when really it's just trying to really just alleviate any accountability, responsibility from myself not having it, to make it somebody else's fault, which kind of goes in line with like this feeling of like winning and losing. What a funny thing that we are as far as winning and losing. Like, it's so important to be right or win, but realistically you learn so much more when you lose something. Like if you lose a game, or if you don't just win, you learn a lot more than if you just win all the time. So why is it that we would like create this thing where I blame you for the reason I didn't want to learn the lesson that I could have learned from this to improve? Kind of a lot there to throw around there. It can go deeper in any direction.
Yeah, there's a lot you could take that to. I think a lot of it's perspective. I also think there's a good chunk that goes into approach. Like, how is it that sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So you could be blaming somebody for something that could wholeheartedly be taken as, this is what I'm seeing. Here's how you can use it to help do better next time. Or it could just be demeaning and degrading. And therefore it's not being used in a manner to be helpful. It's literally just being judgmental and berating someone. So you can take the same thing that could be helpful or be seen as helpful, but if you deliver it the wrong way, your good intentions are overruled by how you did it.
I have a judgment challenge for you on this then, because what you said makes sense. Let's challenge it a little bit. Would you say, if my judgment challenge is the way that somebody is communicating with somebody else, whether it be in terms to improve, say even like a manager talking to somebody, or a friend giving advice, or whatever the situation is, if it comes into a blame scenario, would you say that the way it's delivered could directly correlate with, like, I guess almost I don't want to use the term mental health, but almost mental development, or how far they've come in their own realization of themselves and how they deliver these messages? I would only say that because it seems like whatever insecurity that they're avoiding, or whatever accountability they don't want any part of, or whatever pain they'd be avoiding from being at fault, is generally projected on somebody else based on the amount of damage they have not dealt with themselves or completely ignore.
I don't know if I fully understand the question. It sounded like there was two, maybe three in there. One goes into the person and how they're using it. The other one goes into the person and how it's being used for them. And then the other one, I believe, goes into why the person decided to demand the question the way they did.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I believe the saying is you catch more bees with honey, or
And
maybe it's
vinegar,
flies.
yes. More bees with
Flies.
honey than vinegars.
Yeah, something like that. Either way, basically the moral of that is you're going to get a better response when you request rather than demand. When you demand, you're coming across as more than likely rude or overly assertive. When you could utilize the same situation, but in a positive manner by requesting rather than demanding, and get a much better outcome, because a lot more people are willing to help you if you're not being a dick about it. So even if it's helping themselves, I'm a lot less likely to listen to you and actually hear what you're saying if you're like, yo, go pick that shit up, rather than, hey man, you think you can do me a favor and grab that real quick? Same thing, just asked in a different ways. So once you phrase it in a request rather than a demand, I no longer feel like you're peasant. So I'm much more receptive to it.
Do you think that the way it's asked is a reflection of the development of the person?
Could be. Could just be a bad day. That would go into the psyche of the individual at that particular time. So that's really hard to break down.
All right, I'll try a different approach on it then. Like, I know for even my own life example, even working with my girls, with my family here, I know that even my own development during a time when I'm feeling more agitated or more frustrated, or, who left this thing on the floor? Like one of those, like almost like it's a hard way to ask thing. Instead of going like, all right, ladies, which one of you guys left this here? Let's work out a better way. Having that almost like angry tone before I started would put everybody automatically defensive and like shutting down already. Their defense mechanisms will start going in. And all I did was ask, technically on paper, it's a question. Who left this thing on the floor? Would just be a question. But the way it's delivered has, for even my experience, shown my level of development in being able to, like you said, change my tone, deliver it differently, request versus demand. How hard do I sound versus how much am I trying to be productive for our family and let's learn a lesson here versus being a total asshole. So for me, I have noticed that the different level of my own development has also come over to where it's more productive for my family and my people that I'm with by having a softer tone. Even though I came from barbarian world where like, give me the chicken, was like, that is the nice way. And so it's interesting to see how different it is if you do like those small things, like you said, change it just a little from a request and a demand. Ooh, fun fact. Man, I'm feeling all over today. Fun fact. Do you know the difference between a request and a demand? Like definition wise? Most do not. So
I don't think I've ever looked it up. No. I mean, I know what a request is and I know what a demand is.
Well, how can you tell which is which? Because people will call demands requests all the time.
So the way I see it, a demand is told to you, not asked of you.
So how do you know which is which, though? How do you know when it is or isn't that?
Again, what's being told to you or what's being asked of you is how I see it. So if I told you to get me a water, or if I asked you if you could get me a water, that's a demand versus a request. And then at the end of that, I guess it would just result in, do you do it? And how do I react to that?
There it is. It's the reaction is how you know. Because if somebody goes, hey, can you please grab me a water? That would be really cool. And the person says, no, I can't. The way the person reacts is how you know whether they were making a request or a demand. Because if I said, hey, can you please get me a water? And you said no, I'd be like, what the hell, man? It's just a water. Just what's up with you? You see this all the time in relationships where somebody will ask something, the person can't fulfill the ask, and then somebody gets upset, whether the expectation was you should just do it because I asked you. That means it wasn't a request, because a request, if I was like, hey, can you grab me a water? And you're like, I really can't. I'd be like, all right, cool. You can't. It was just a request. If you can, you can. If you can't, you can't. Either way, we'll figure it out. But if I get pissed off because you didn't get it, now I was actually making a demand of you. And I'm mad that you didn't do what I told you, even if it was in a question format. And that's usually how you can tell the difference if somebody's making demands, even if they're asking questions. It's all in how they handle it when it doesn't go the way they wanted.
Utilize it in a workspace when you request time off. Are you requesting time off? Are you demanding time off? Or are you giving a notice that you'll be taking that time off?
You can tell by the way that people react. If they're like, we can't do that. We can't give you the time off. You go, F this place. This place sucks. I hate this place. And they have a bad attitude the whole day. Well, I guess you were making a demand. It didn't go your way. It wasn't a request. Like, meh, okay.
But again, if it wasn't a request, does it mean it was a demand, or could have it just been simply a statement? Like, hey, I'm going to take the 15th through the 18th off. Sorry, we can't let you do that. I was letting you know that I'm going to. Like, I was just being courteous. I wasn't asking you necessarily, and I'm not demanding that you have to. I'm just letting you know I won't be here. So whatever you got to do to get your shit in order, you should probably do that.
Well, yeah, so for most human beings, people like you and me are those kind of maniacs. I'm in an entire house of people who do not have that thing. I think you and I have that thing. I didn't ask you for the days. I'm letting you know that's happening. If I don't work here after that, I'm actually still fine. But I'm just letting you know that I'm not going to be here. Like, that's a different level of I don't give a fuck that most humans don't have, depending on their circumstances. I would probably venture that one. I don't know. What do you think?
I would agree. I think it's a rarity. Because there's a lot of concern that comes with that situation specifically. There's a lot of concern that comes with standing your ground on what you think your time is worth. And if you're working for somebody and you request your time off, you're basically asking them if you can live your life. If they say no, I mean, at that point, they're governing whether or not you can actually go out and enjoy the existence that you have.
Yeah, I have run into this. This was one of the main reasons why I'm very difficult to employ as like an employee, because as a challenger type, I don't always have to be in control of everything, but I won't be controlled. And so when somebody says you can't go, like for example, my grandma just passed, and so you can't go to your grandma's funeral, you are scheduled for Sunday. There's a lot of people that would go, I guess I can't make it because this job that gives me X amount of dollars per hour told me that that's more important than me being there with my family. Nope. My values do not match up with this demand that you're making. And there's a lot of people who go, I guess I can't make it. I guess I'll be here Sunday.
I think you got to factor in what the value is of whatever it is that you're going to attend. Like if it's something like, yeah, I'm going to go catch a movie with some friends, I don't really see that being like a quittable offense to a job. So like if you were like, no, I'm going to see this movie, I was just letting you know, and then you come back and you don't have a job and you're like, all right, well, shit, I guess I got to get another job. Was it really worth it? But there's going to be another movie. You can catch that at a later date. You kind of don't really get the second chance to attend a funeral for that individual person. So at that point, if you're going to tell me I can't go and attend a funeral to a loved one that I have, that literally I don't have the option to do at another point in time, I will do some shady shit in a public bathroom to be able to make up the difference for not having this job if I need to. So I'm going. It's just whether or not I come back here after.
A shady shit in a public bathroom.
If it's important enough to me.
You're funny, man. It's a good point though. It's a good point. It's all perspective on those things. I think this would be like in some of our future ones. I would like to have some extra people on here, just kind of like, yeah, but what if, or what about this scenario I had? I think it'd be a little fun for us to do that. Just saying in a future light, because there's so many, life has got so many hypotheticals that I think it'd be fun to break down into these categories. All right, jumping back on topic though, on blame. When blame is somebody assigning fault or wrong on somebody. Generally, if you're trying to work through self-improvement or understanding yourself or letting go of stuff from the past or getting rid of some of the trauma you've been through or whatever it would be, almost what's that quote? It's let's see, all hurt doesn't come from you, but all healing does. And so all of the healing that you have to do is all you. But if you're so busy blaming other people for hurt that happened to you, it takes away from your ability to heal because you're alleviating your responsibility for healing. And so when it comes to using blame, generally, it's somebody trying to alleviate accountability for their part in it. I have an entire video called the Accountability Challenge. And I do this with people who have victim mentality, people who have victim mindsets. This all happened to me. It all happened to me. It all happened to me. Woe is me. Misery loves company. Most of the time when talking to somebody, they almost always tell the story in a way that alleviates their part. There's very rarely that I see situations where there's no accountability for being in that location, being with that person, provoking somebody. Like there's always some catalyst. Very rarely is somebody doing everything right and then having some massive abuse or a conflict or trauma or something happen. Not to say always, there's situations where people really are being good and it goes wrong, but I would say a very, very high percentage of it goes to people who just pushed the limit and it blew up in their face. And so when people tell the stories, like, example, I know people who have been in like long relationships and then had like one a physical altercation. They're together for 8 years, 10 years, whatever, and then one day snaps and the dude punches her in the face, for example. And that person would then create an identity that they were in an abusive relationship and they were abused. And I'm like, when you're telling this story, are you trying to make it out like you were just peacefully there? And after 10 years of just lovely foot rubs and making soup and rubbing his shoulders and making sure that he feels good every day, he just started punching you in the face, like just out of nowhere. Like, you were just being an awesome person. And he was like, I'm not having any more great anymore. I'm going to mess this up. When you find out the real story, there was a lot of provoking, shaming, calling him a bitch, being a jerk, saying, what the fuck you going to do? Not letting him walk by, getting in his face. And you go, these are the parts of the story that if you add that in there, you're no longer being abused. You picked a fight and lost a fight. It's not an abusive relationship because you were directly provoking combat and then got what you asked for. But if you create an identity of a victimhood and you make yourself a victim by the way you tell the story to alleviate your part, you make overcoming it unbeatable. You make it so it's an impossible thing to move beyond because it happened to you and didn't happen for you to learn. Maybe learn to negotiate a little better. Maybe change my tone in the conversation. Maybe I should listen so that way I can hear that side of the story. Or perhaps I shouldn't get in someone's face and call them a fucking bitch because they don't seem to like that very much. And sometimes when I push them, they push back. And those situations, again, for anybody who's in those things, it's not at that's everybody. There's no absolutes. It's just, I've heard situations where I'm like, that was kind of your fault. You picked a fight with somebody who's bigger, stronger, and meaner, and you lost. If you tell it as abuse, you'll be a victim forever. But if you say, picked a fight, didn't win, Learned a lesson. Don't pick a fight that way. Now you grow. And I think that's part of where blame is used to alleviate their accountability in whatever circumstance that they were in, no matter how crazy they are. Again, I can go into some stories I've heard that are like very tragic stories, but then obviously the assessment of tragic is, well, maybe because that person did turn around and save a lot of people from making that choice because they learned that lesson the hard way. So blame, I think, just kind of gets in the way. I think if you take away the responsibility, accountability, or look for the opportunity to improve in a terrible or a difficult or a rough situation, it keeps you trapped. And when you're trapped in the race to acceptance, you get generally stuck in denial of your part and denial of the ability to grow from it. And that's a heavy thought to have. It's a heavy thought where people get stuck, and truly they get stuck most of their lives in that one because they shape their entire identity to the point where I've even seen girls who had those scenarios would go on first dates with guys and would have to tell them, I was in an abusive relationship. Here's the story. I was in an abusive relationship. Here's the story, to almost shape their identity around that for whatever misery loves company thing or feel sorry for me or sympathy that comes with those stories. But they weren't authentic. And I believe it creates a disconnect from growth and healing when you tell the story without the part where, well, I pushed him and told him he's a fucking bitch and said, what are you going to do? Well, we left that part out of the story because I'm not abused anymore if that part's in there. And it messes up my identity that I'm working for the sympathy part. That was a very long answer, I'm sure.
I think embarrassment comes into it. Knowing you fucked up in something, and then when you relay the story, and as you're saying it, you realize what you're about to say is going to make you look foolish. So we just leave that part out. I mean, we can get the gist of the story without telling you that. That's irrelevant. So rather than be embarrassed and kind of mess up my victim story here, I'm just going to go ahead and set that to the side. And if it ever comes up, then we can go ahead and address it. And I might be able to defend it at that point, depending on what it is and if I'm clever enough. But for now, not needed. So being the victim doesn't necessarily help you, though. Like you can have an issue, go through it and move past it, and still have it happen to you, rather than let it be who you are now. So like you said, making it a part of you and your persona and who you are, who you identify as, it's not really healthy. If you're not going to take the lesson out of it, but you're going to carry around the baggage the entire time, that doesn't make sense. Make that make sense for me. Like why would you keep the trash knowing you were throwing it away for an entire week? Were you just going to leave it in the trunk of your car and never actually take it to the dump? Or like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I did mention that in our show last night. We were talking on the Jam Fam program. We were live and we were bringing that up on how, when I talked to Anthony Dahlman Jones, he said over 30 years of working with people, it seems like even if people know exactly what the answer is, over half or at least half are still going to choose to do it their own damn way and hold on to their stuff, keep their baggage. And his assessment was, after doing 30 years of this, he said, it seems like there's an invested interest in people keeping their problems. In other terms, it means there's a value to keeping your problems that's higher than having the solutions. So even if they know the answer, my problems are worth more than the solution is to me. So that victimhood, keeping the victim mentality going, the persona, the identity of I'm an abused person, or I've been abandoned, or whatever it is that we hold on to and tell the story in that way. Now, for any of you guys who are watching this and going, wow, Rick, really just, you're assigning blame or shame or judgment right now. I grew up in a highly abused household, physically, emotionally. I know abandonment. Both of my parents have left for years at any given time. So I understand what it's like to have be a little kid and being hit in a way that is not a punishment. This is abuse. If anybody wants to see those stories or understand I've got places where those are there, but even my dad is like, I was extremely way too hard on you. That was not how you teach a kid. But I could tell you stories when it comes to like what's being abused like, but I can also show you how to turn that into something where you can become a benefit to other people who have been in those scenarios. And I think that's where you watch some of the success stories from people who have been raped or molested or abused or abandoned or beaten or whatever it has been, where they become somebody who helps rehabilitate others through those things. You see it in like the most tragic of situations, and you see heroes arise from like these tragedies to help other people work through what they've gone through. And so on this, as far as my accountability part to it, I can't say it was my fault as being a kid born in this environment, but the way that I chose to take what I've been through and treat other people is the lesson that I could take from it to become a stronger person for the people that I protect. And because I've been through such terrible situations, I've adapted to recognize that I don't have fear that holds me back from conflict, confrontation, or damage that other people are afraid of, because most people aren't going to be able to hurt me nearly as tough as when I was 8 years old versus a grown ass man. So I'm not that worried about what other people are going to do. So it takes away a lot of fear, makes me a better protector, makes me more empathetic to people who have been through tough things. But it also makes it so when I say tell the story differently, it gives you accountability to how to handle it from somebody who's actually been in the neighborhood that you are in, to say, I've been in hell before. I lived there. You're not blowing my mind. You're not like, oh, woe was me. I was 2 houses down from where you're at. I know what you're talking about. But I think it's difficult when you have people who have never had any trauma try and tell you how to deal with trauma, which is why we got guys in the group who help people with addiction, help people with seeing things from like alcoholism or drug abuse, because that's what they did and they've overcome it. And I think that's where you can see value, as far as using blame in these situations really just takes away your ability to take that accountability, tell the story the right way so you can heal. So that's why no blame doesn't work. It doesn't work. Slows you down, messes the whole thing up. Now in the next one, I think here's what I'm going to do. No, you know what? Let's do it this way. Is between shame and judgment on which one to go to next. And I'm going to go with shame. I think shame is way more unique than people will give it credit for, because I've been writing on shame for a while now. And I'm going to simplify this a lot, but I'm going to give you first crack at shame. What do you think about shame?
I spent a lot of time there. It's a nice place. You can get cozy in it. No, shame's again, it's subjective. It's how you look at it. If someone's going to make you feel a certain way, they're going to put you down, they're going to make you feel bad, you feel like you shouldn't have done that, you have the option to look at it as, all right, yeah, maybe not. What else could I have done? Or you could soak in your misery and feel sorry for yourself, and you could play the victim card, tell everyone how mean they were to you, and you can go on with the rest of your day ignoring like that advice wasn't just given to you on a silver platter.
That's true. You see that all the time. That's why I say everything is a choice. It's because if you're given the answer and you still choose your problems over the solution, interesting choice. I wonder why. The answers are always right around you. Just how do you choose to handle it? But it's interesting that people do that. You're right. Good call.
The judgment aspect is going to be a little bit more interesting. I should go ahead and lead us into that.
Well, I'm going to break shame down a little. This one's a fun one. For
right.
shame, the definition for shame is a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the conscientiousness or awareness of wrong or foolish behavior. Now, the 2 ways that this is used is people use shame on others, or you feel ashamed to yourself, and people assess shame to their self. Shame is interesting. Here's why. And we'll tap into judgment a little bit for this. What is the purpose of shame by itself? It's only to create a painful feeling, a negative emotion, if you will. You choose which one it was. I mean, whether it's for humiliation, distress, create self doubt, try to wear down your confidence. Shame is designed to make you feel bad one way or another, whatever feeling you end up using as your defense mechanism is your feeling, but it won't be a positive one because shame is designed to only like have you go into a negative feeling. The interesting thing with shame is that it's a tool, it's not a purpose. I'm going to say it again. Shame is a tool, not a purpose. There's no reason for shame on its own. It's just a negative emotion aimlessly. Shame is the tool that a judgment needs to manipulate you into whatever I believe you should be doing. So if I don't say, for example, just say, I don't like that hat you're wearing, just example. And if I said, you look stupid in that hat, you should wear a different one. What I did was I said, you look stupid, my judgment. It's designed to make you feel bad wearing that hat. The reason you have that negative emotion is because it wears down your confidence around wearing that hat to make it so that I can decide what I believe is a better hat for you based on my personal opinion. But instead of saying like, hey, is there a hat that maybe matches better? I want you to feel bad so you don't have very good awareness or defensiveness against what it is that I'm trying to make you do. And you just go, okay, well, then I'll change my hat. And you do what I want you to do. I almost beat you into submission to do what I want you to. This is done in a very subtle way sometimes, or it can be really hard and direct. But shame is the tool for my judgment to try to manipulate you by wearing down your positive emotions.
I think the intention there though is the deciding factor. Like if you come up to me and you're honestly telling me like, yo, that hat makes you look stupid, like don't wear that, and you're being sincere about it, and the hat really does make me look stupid, I'm just not seeing it. Maybe I'm having an off day, maybe it had sentimental value, whatever the case may be, but it literally makes me look stupid. My ears are all flopped out or it's too big for my head, whatever the case. Then you're not applying shame, you're applying a judgment, but that judgment is to help aid me in a better direction. It's not so that I wear a blue hat instead of a black hat. It's not because you don't want to see me in a hat, and it's not because you want this hat. It's just because the hat isn't flattering to me. So you're trying to do me a favor.
Depending on your personal development, and I say that would be the challenge as far as all of us as humans. If your development is high enough to have an awareness that somebody, well, I guess you, like you said, intent or dynamic. If we're very close and I'm like, Eddie, that is not the hat for you, bro. But you know that I've been there for you thick and thin, that I would only have your best interest and I have no ulterior motive other than for you to do better. Then you would maybe assess it that way. If you didn't know me and I just walked in, now some guy's like, yo, man, your hat looks stupid, man. You should wear something else. That's a stupid hat. And you love that hat and you don't know me or my intention. What is my purpose then for giving you that shame and that judgment?
Could have been the same. I just don't know you well enough to be able to make the deciding factor on that for myself. It doesn't mean that your intention had changed. It just means that my awareness of who you are and what you might have meant by that was altered because I had lack of information as to who you were or what your intention might be. But the same thing goes to the other side of that. We could be boys forever. It doesn't mean that you won't change. You could very easily get some sort of ulterior motive at some point in our friendship that changes the dynamic, but only on your side. It's only announced to you. I'm still blind to it. So every time that every one of the trusting moments up until the point you decided to change has happened to lead me to go, yeah, I trust him in his opinion. Now you can utilize that to your advantage. Now I trust your opinion. And what I'm hearing from you may be for my best interest, or so I think.
You're suggesting, and maybe I'm paraphrasing this correctly or wrong, let me know if I'm right. Benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that your motive isn't malicious. I'm going to give you at least the opportunity to make it so like you trying to say you think my hat is stupid is possibly because you just want me to do better, not necessarily to make me feel ashamed.
Could be.
So
like I said, if we have a long history with one another and you've always had my back, you've always looked out for my best interest, there's nothing saying that will remain consistent. At any point in time, you could very well catch information or have a new plan that you've come up with or whatever was involved in your life that has altered our dynamic, but it's only aware to you because you're the one that was in that space. To me, we're still the same. We've always been friends, but now all of your advice, all of your best interest towards me is still viewed as that on my end. It's just not intended like that on your end anymore. But I don't know this. So I could literally be giving you the benefit of the doubt because we have history, yet you could be changing the entire game without my knowledge.
It is possible. That's true. All right, let's up the ante a little bit because somebody's clothing is easy. But you already know that most people, when it comes to shame, generally comes to something that's a little more important, like people's beliefs. So, for example, whether you're religious, not religious, or you're political, not political, left, right, red, blue, you see people nowadays doing the most malicious attacks on somebody's character, not because they have a benefit of a doubt of trying to make it so things are better, but because we have a different point of view means that you are a piece of shit, and I'm going to let you know about it. Give me the assessment of benefit of the doubt here when you know I have malicious intent to make you feel terrible because you agree with something that I don't agree with.
I don't know if benefit of the doubt comes into play because you've changed the dynamic now. Now we have what the situation is, person's beliefs. I mean, if you believe you're right on the left side of the aisle and I believe I'm right on the right side of the aisle, and we're not looking at facts, we're just looking at left or right, then we'll never get to a point where I can give you the benefit of the doubt. But if you come from the left side of the aisle with information from the left that makes the right side of the aisle look like they should probably do some different things, then benefit of the doubt is you're bringing this to my attention so that I can be better informed. You might have called me a dumbass or, whatever the case may be to be able to get your point across. So you're bad at communication. My bad. I hope you work on that. But your information's still valid. So the benefit of the doubt here is, yeah, you're a dick with how you said it. You brought it to me in a demanding manner rather than requesting it of me. So it came across a lot more harsh. But your information still holds up. So benefit of the doubt, you're just trying to educate me so that I can make better decisions.
I think it's a strong approach for people to use as a tool as the benefit of the doubt. And I definitely see your practical application makes sense, dude. Like it seems on paper, we already know how many of us do you see people do that without having a defensive posture? Generally we're very reactive when it comes to that instead of, I guess, where you're doing a stoic, like, okay, hold on. Well, maybe you have something that I can use to see your point of view, even though it's flooded with shame and judgment. Let me try and see through that. Yeah, the embarrassment of it. Yeah.
People don't like to be wrong.
It's very true. And this makes the benefit of the doubt tool difficult to use if you don't have practice. But I think is a good point too. And I want to go back to just what we said before, even with the blame thing and the way people say it, that tone thing. I do believe that even if everyone's belief systems have merit, and let's assume because people believe it, that they believe that's what it is. Now, I'll talk about this a lot later in depth because belief is at the core of our existence for who we are as people, not just in faith, but ourselves. But it's also the fastest one that can change because one new piece of information can completely alter an entire belief system. But if you don't know about it, you can't change it because you don't know that information yet.
If you allow it.
If you allow it. Of course, that's where, everything's a choice. If you learn that that's 100% wrong, we can show you 1,000 ways why it's not that way, but you still choose to go that's what it is. I don't care. That's part of being human. Everything's a choice. You have free will, choose what you want. even if you know it's wrong and that's your cognitive dissonance, but you're going to do it anyways. That's one of the options. It's no problem. But you will have a big disconnect with the community of people if you're trying to, as a goal, connect with people, educate, or fit in, or be a part of a group, or whatever your goal might be. You are going to run into a direct conflict with a goal, for example, simply because you won't accept new information as part of your processor. Pride, ego, that stuff. We talked about that before. Man, people will get in their own damn way. So you're right. But the challenge, I would say, is if you're communicating in a way of blame, shame, and judgment, it's a direct reflection of how developed you are as a communicator. In the same way, like you said, tone matters. And so being able to say, well, I hear that you're upset about this. Let's break it down. Or even like one thing we use often is so effective. You know what's a crazy effective thing? Is a shit sandwich or a crap sandwich, depending if you want to be PG on this thing. And that's when people go like,
I think it's a little too late for PG.
Well, I mean, for us, but I mean, for any human being who's watching this and decides they want to use some of this. But it's the whole like something like positive, like, okay, I see that this is important to you and you have a lot of passion behind that. And I appreciate that. I don't agree with this part and I think that's wrong, but I definitely want to hear what you have to say about it. Or can you explain why that makes more sense? You know, like that thing where it's like, you know, good, not so good, but still good. And it makes people almost like put down some of their attacks and say like the negative response is like, you're a fucking idiot, or you're wrong, or you're stupid, or shows how dumb you are. Like these shame and judgments, they get thrown around. And I think that's what's when people start getting like super offended instead of the benefit of the doubt, or let me understand where you're coming from. I think it's interesting that we can't disagree without it being volatile. I don't agree, but I also don't see it from your point of view. Like I see a 6, you see a 9, you know, like we're both not wrong, but we both don't see what the other person sees. And that's where blame and shame just muddies the conversation from being able to understand your point of view, because I'm not going to move. And I think that where you're standing makes you stupid. There's no benefit. It slows us down. And it also makes it so you'll feel, like you said, embarrassed. I'm not going to be open. I'm not going to be vulnerable. I'm not going to be completely truthful. And I'm going to knock you down for anything that you share and create what, you know, you see these straw man arguments. I'm going to grab some point you didn't really mean, and I'm going to turn that into the argument so that I can be right instead of we can grow.
The internet does it all the time. They love to use grammar. You can have the most beautiful, articulate, and direct answer that is riddled with nothing but fact. But if you spelt the word Cincinnati wrong, they're going to ignore everything else. And they're going to be like, Cincinnati spelled like this. Like, okay, so I fucked up on like 3 letters. My bad. Did you read the rest of that? No? All right. Well, guess that was wasted on you.
See it all the time. I had a couple posts like that too, where like I took a quote that was a Socrates quote, and it was something where, intelligent people learn from everything and everyone. Average people learn from their experiences only, and stupid people already know everything. And I said it was a Socrates quote. And it was one of those things where some Australian company flagged it as false information. They said Socrates didn't say that. How the hell would they know? Like that, I mean, as far as, because the thing is, and this is why it was a semantical thing where people are saying, you're misquoting who said that, and that's where the thing is wrong. And I'm going to show you. And one guy even took one of my jam the excuses thing and like changed the words to say like, you can get these results if you work out 1 day a month. He's like, see, you made a quote. There's your quote. And I'm like, well, in all fairness, probably the best marketing campaign that I've had so far. So thank you. And it was interesting though, instead of like looking at the quote itself, which who cares who said it, the quote itself is completely ignored by everyone trying to tell me like, here's the things, here's I already know this and I know this, and you're wrong and you're wrong. because of the name at the bottom. And the ironic thing for me was, if you're so adamant on being so right on this, which category of person do you think in this quote you're falling into? And that's what the irony to the entire interaction was, is like, they're trying to tell everybody what everything is aggressively and insultingly and create the straw man argument. But you're not the person who's trying to learn from everyone or everything. You're not sharing necessarily your experiences. You are telling everybody how everything is, though.
Could have been as simple as solid quote. I like the message. I don't think it was Socrates, though.
Ironic facts for you, for any philosophy people out there. Socrates was big on not writing his stuff down on purpose, because he already knew at that point in time it's no different than misreading a text message. You're going to read my stuff and you're going to mess it all up. That's not the way I said it. You're going to add your own things to it. You're going to say it a different way. I don't like my stuff written that way. So I'll have conversations. And later on, I think it was Plato who started like really writing down a lot of the stuff that was translated from Socrates over. But Socrates wasn't big on writing his things down. He was big on the conversations and the asking questions and all of that stuff. So it's ironic to say Socrates didn't say that when it was 2,000 years ago. Like, he didn't like to write stuff down. He very easily could have said this. So how do you fact check? How do you fact check that? Like, there's no like writing that he liked to do, even if he did say it and it did come from him. What? Like, I got stuck on how that was the argument. Like, that's where it was. Like, we're going to stay on that point. Like you said, Cincinnati isn't spelled that way. I'm like, yeah, but you missed all of the facts because of a typo. Interesting.
People choose to see what they want to see. If it's not going to fit their agenda, or if it's, sometimes it's even if it hits too close to home, people will get defensive because it's easier to call you out, make you look foolish, than it is to go, shit, well, that applies to me. Or damn, I didn't see that. So it's typos are someone's best friend that doesn't want to take responsibility.
Rectamundo. So when it comes to that, how much growth and development and connection do you think it's made with that strategy?
3.6%.
Low end of the scale there.
Final answer.
It was 3.6. Irony on this one. This is why throwing shame and blame, and we'll get into the judgment aspect of it, but judgments, this style of conversation, this provocative way that people communicate with each other, only slows down the ability to be stronger or grow or learn or develop, because you have to play the game of who is right versus understanding each other and respecting each other and growing and even just being respectful in disagreements. Missed opportunities. Slows it down. Muddies the water. No blame, no shame. All right.
I heard
judgments. Oh, go ahead.
I heard a quote not long ago. It was, arguments are only arguments to people that don't know how to communicate properly. To those people, they're discussions and a chance to be able to grow and improve.
I think it's very, very much applies to this. Good quote. Our judgment is that's a great quote, Eddie.
Well, I feel the opposite of shame. Whatever that may be.
So let's get into judgments, because this is a funny one. Oh, fun. Okay. Hey, oh man, I got so many things. Here's a fun thing. And I think I talked to one of our guys about this recently. Shame is a relative to one of the enemies within. Each enemy within, whether it's doubt, fear, distractions, or excuses, They each have to be approached differently. Shame resembles one of those the most. Pop quiz, multiple choice. Which of the enemies within, between doubt, fear, distractions, and excuses, most resembles shame?
I would probably say fear.
Ding, ding, ding. Correctamundo, Eddie. Show through again, 100%. Well done.
Look at that. I was just guessing.
You had 25% chance of getting it right. Out of all of the different ways that you would combat it, whether it be with courage or with certainty or with discipline, shame is only as real as you believe it is. You have to accept that somebody is trying to make you feel bad and then apply your own negative emotions in agreement for it to work. Just like fear, which is not real unless you start adding in your negative emotions to make it real. Shame isn't real unless you decide it is. And it's defeated the same exact way as fear.
I don't remember who it was, but I was listening to, I believe it was a podcast. I'll see if I can find it for you. But either way, this guy said, I can never offend you. I can only say something and you can choose to be offended.
Correct. Everything's a choice.
So at no point in time, what I do or say or what I wear, none of that will ever offend you because I'm offending you. It will only offend you because that's what you chose to view it as.
That is a very important statement for the world, is that you're not offended, you're choosing to be. Like, nobody's doing anything to you. You're just choosing to judge, shame, or blame them for the way that you are taking it. That's why being offended is an interesting thing. You have to decide other people's intent and judge, and it almost feels like such a high horse mentality to be offended, because it's one of the few things. Here's a fun fact with me. I'm very, very, very difficult to offend. But the one thing that offends me is offended people. It's the one thing that actually gets me like kind of like a little heated. Like the two things that really kind of get me like I'm initially going to get involved hard is bullies and offended people. And I think offended people falls into bullies, and that's probably why. When somebody is offended because of the things that they're not able to deal with internally or benefit of the doubt or accept or be able to try to understand, they immediately dictate the actions and words and the way other people are supposed to live based on what they haven't dealt with themselves. I do not like that point of view. If somebody can't deal with their own things, and so they have to subjugate everyone to do it the way that they need it done simply because they can't deal with their own things, I do not subscribe to this. I don't fall in line because you haven't had the courage to deal with your own points of view. And so you're going to dictate everyone else has to walk on eggshells because you don't like certain words, or you don't like the way somebody thinks, or you don't like what they view it as, or their point of view. And so I'm offended and you need to stop doing what you're doing because I don't like it.
I think it's very different so you use judgment. I like to call it opinion. Same thing, but it's very different when you have an opinion and when you feel that your opinion should be adopted by everyone around, or the person that did something that you didn't like. Your judgment on that, your opinion, is you didn't like it and it should change. And you can have that opinion, you can have that judgment, go for it. That's what you need to do. If that's what you feel like you should do, go for it. I'm with you on the fact when you start making it my problem that your judgment about what I'm doing needs to change. Like, I need to fix me because it's making you unhappy. This is my life. Like, I'm doing what I'm doing And you have the option to hear it, see it, be around it, be involved in it. Like, if you don't like it, I don't have to change that necessarily. You could fix all that as well just by removing yourself. So if it really bothers you that much, why do I have to change it? I think the opinion is definitely drawn once you start projecting it to somebody else has to alter their behavior because you don't like it.
It's directly in the way with the golden rule of I want people to treat me the way I would like to treat people, or treat people the way you'd like to be treated. When you start making, like you said before, a demand that you need to alter what you're doing because I don't like it, now we're going against the golden rule, because it's directly against your own principles of I don't want things that way. Instead of me changing to be able to like make it better or try and do it in a more productive or positive way, depending on my level of communication style, my tones, my intelligence, my capability to communicate effectively, it'll turn into only blame, shame, judgment to tell you how you need to be. I'm going to shame you into submission to make you change or feel like you forcibly should change, and it's all your damn fault for doing it. And when people are approaching that way, there cannot be growth. We cannot connect. We cannot find like any kind of like connection to each other. It'll only be conflict, because who is right is a game that nobody wins. Even if you are right, as far as how well you argue, or you can be more aggressive, or you can shame somebody into a submission point with like, you know what, I'm done with this conversation. Even if you feel like you won, at what cost to the dynamic that you have? If it's a friendship, or if it's a work relationship, or an acquaintance, or whatever, it's somebody who will go, okay, whatever. If you want to feel like you won with this, you win. I don't like talking to you. And so now it costs us a potential friendship, or a dynamic, or even a long-term friendship that dies because somebody can't go, let me give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to blame, shame, or judge. I just want to hear what your point of view is. And it's okay if we don't agree, instead of trying to make you feel terrible so you do it my way, because I can't deal with any other way.
I think it's hard when facts and logic is being utilized, though, because it's not necessarily you trying to get me to do it your way. You're just trying to enlighten me on seeing what it actually is. And when you bring that to the table, and then I still deny that, and I refuse to accept it, you've only tried to benefit me and educating me, or allowing me to see something I had. Me denying that is basically just spitting in your face. Like, I'll ignore that because I would rather stand in my position than hear you out. And that is frustrating. That is infuriating, especially when it comes from somebody that you care for, or you have a long history with. Because you don't want to see your people making poor choices. And if there's a better option directly in front of it, you bring it to the table. It's not about blame, shame, or judgment. At that point, you're literally just trying to help. And then if it's viewed as blame, shame, or judgment, makes them feel embarrassed, and they lock up, they shut down. Well, yeah, you might have just ended a friendship over that. But was it because you inserted blame, shame, or judgment, or was it because that's how they viewed it? And you can't control how somebody else views things.
Right. No, I agree with you completely. And I think it's a difficult part for points of view on this. And when people are getting defensive on things, it's really, we just did that video on the progress report, the relationship progress report. If somebody starts getting into that defensive mode, start getting angrier or louder or shutting down or retreating, that's the progress report in the middle of that conversation to show how well you're communicating your point of view. And I think the problem is not necessarily the information, it's the emotions that we attach to the information. And this is why the other tool that we would recommend that we practice, and it is indeed practice because it is the highest form of intelligence, is to be able to use the objective perspective. I'm going to try and remove all of my emotions I want to add to it. It doesn't mean I don't have them. It just means I'm going to try and look at it without applying all of my feelings to what it is you're saying. And then after I understand where you're coming from, do my feelings align with this or not? It is easier said than done. So all of the things that you said, if I don't assign your motive, and I even try to ask you, like, what is your intention for trying to tell me this stuff? And you go, I just want you to have more information to be better and make better choices because I care about you. That's my real motive. If you assess my motive is to make you feel bad because I'm being a dickhead, that's not my true motive, but you added it for me because of your emotions, not because of it's not because of the facts. It's not because of information you wanted to know. I created your own answer for you, and I will judge and defend and attack based on the answer I made up on my observations, my experiences, and the way I've seen other people do things must be what you're doing. When simply asking, well, what is the reason that you're coming at me this way for? Could easily just fill in all of that direction I just went emotionally with an objective answer of going, this is the reason why I'm doing it. And then we can build from there. And I think it's interesting that people will fill in the blanks for others and then beat them down for what they gave their answer to. It's not real, though.
What if the answer itself is stupid? What if
That's
the objective
subjective.
that they're doing it for is stupid?
Well, then that's where you just kind of assess the value of the dynamic to you then. If there is no value that I'm getting from this person, what's the reason to continue? Because my personal development would tell me, if we're going in a direction that I cannot use or grow or utilize, or we can't connect or we won't improve in, is there a benefit to the conversation at all?
This particular conversation or conversations we've had that led us to this moment, like we might not see eye to eye on everything. So
Sure.
Maybe this conversation's a wash. Maybe the next one will be good or bad, whatever. But with everything being so subjective and based around your perception of it, I could easily utilize the argument that you're coming at me with new information and then turn around and go, well, I didn't know this now. But what makes you think that in the future, new information won't come to be able to contradict that? So why should I take this at face value for now when you're just bringing it to me? When in the future, I could turn around and potentially do the same. Science does it all the time. So
In which case, objective perspective mixed in with the benefit of the doubt makes it so I'm very open to hear what you have to say. If you start mixing in a whole bunch of emotions and judgments and being offended and blame and shame to it, it's going to muddy our ability to grow if your intention is to share new information for us to be better. And that's why no blame, no shame, no judgments, because it doesn't mean you don't have value unless I start telling you you don't, which is a fucked up way to approach things. That's my judgment.
and it's still left to me to believe you. If you tell me I don't have value and I don't believe you, I mean, it basically dies right then and there. If I do believe you, then hell, I could alter my entire lifestyle out of that one moment.
Yep.
I don't like playing video games with you. You're not fun.
That hurts me deep, man.
Yeah, it could.
Flip the board. We're funny. We're funny creatures, us human beings. Well, I feel good. I mean, we can go way deeper on this, but I mean, it's been what, an hour and a half or so? An hour?
There's 100 forks that come off of this topic.
Yeah, I'd love to have this is where it starts applying to like real life stuff. Is how does it apply to how I communicate, how I receive things? Am I giving the benefit for the doubt? Can I slow down? What's my progress report? Like all these pieces are just these tools that you have the ability to use to be able to take the objective perspective and practice. Most of the time you see people in like relationships arguing. Most arguments are going to be with a spouse or a girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever people are with. And you'll see most of it come from there. And that's where it's really, truly a test when all of these emotions that we're talking about are dialed all the way to the maximum, both positive and negative, to make it so a simple disagreement is a blowout. Whereas, like, you and me are good friends, but very rarely are we going to have a blowout. But my girl and I will get into stuff where it's like, this is going so far off the rails because the emotional attachment is dialed way up to the top. And I think that's where the practice comes in for all of us. And it gets really, really difficult to do if you don't have the right tools, the right team you're practicing with, working with the right kind of conversations or people, or what I've seen the most is have the ability to ask the questions I don't know to ask to help me to be able to overcome my own stuff. And that's where we get in the way. So in which case it leads back to follow us on the thing, subscribe, do all the stuff. Check out Eddie on pure.defiance on Instagram and on TikTok. And then also check us out on justamileaday.com. And you'll see the Everything is a Choice window in there. Check us out on Amazon. You can buy the book if you want to get the first part of this. And if you really are one of those guys who are like, I'm one of the guys who wants to fulfill my purpose, be a better spouse, be better at communicating, have stronger friendships, be a better man every day, hang out with other warriors just like you at Everything is a Choice and apply to see if you can get into the group with us, if you're the kind of fit that's with us, because not every one of us is a fit. Eddie and I are going to be a very specific way for some people, and others will not connect to us. And that's cool. But there is somebody out there you'll connect with. Find a group that you can connect with to improve yourself every day for your family and for your purpose in your life. So check us out at all of our stuff. Eddie, you got any closing thoughts on blame, shame, and judgment before we bounce out of here?
No, I think we pretty much covered it all. The best thing you do is just lead yourself to a spot where you can remove that and see it objectively. It's only going to hinder you if you keep all that in there when you're trying to have a growing conversation. So leave it at the door, collect your information, make your assessments, apply it the best you can, move forward to bigger and better things.
Well said. Thank you, everybody, for watching or listening or whichever way you did it. Check us out on YouTube or on Spotify. Other than that, being able to use the objective perspective, no blame, no shame, no judgments, is just like everything. It's a choice. Good night, everybody.
Choice.